Alrighty, and we are back with Rick. Rick, what is up, dude?
Hey, not much. Great to be back. Sorry I missed last week.
People were worried
sick with the
about
stomach
you.
bug. Yeah, at one point I thought the cyclospora got me, but no, I'm still alive, still kicking. Thank you for the nice wishes for those people out there.
Yeah, we don't talk about the many people who said, good, let his stomach break. No one wished you stomach pain. But yeah, we're glad you're feeling better. We were in Michigan at the peak of it, which was obviously the hot spot. So,
and I got sick like 10 days after that.
Which is the buffer. Yeah, exactly. So it could have been that. I mean,
for sure. It could have been, but everything I read was just like, give it a day. Don't just like run to the hospital to get tests. Like there's no point. Most people recover without antibiotics, so that's what I did. So it was fun.
Thank God. I mean, yeah, well, you never know. It's always a roll of a dice with this stuff. Nothing's worse than stomach problems, too, because it just ruins your whole day.
No. I almost thought about jokingly making like a Fetterman turn where I come back this week and I'm super conservative and I'm like, something changed in the bathroom, man. I saw the light.
Your microbiome changed your entire personality. No, we'd have to start shipping you kombucha.
Yeah, now I'm on RFK's diet of meat and ferments.
And we'll be talking about him later. He's on the road doing a cooking show. But while you were recovering, we had Mr. Joe Tache on the podcast, the Massachusetts Senate socialist candidate for the Senate election. And yeah, we had our interview with him a couple days ago. Did you get a chance to listen to it? What'd you think?
Yeah, it was great. It was awesome. Everyone should go listen if you haven't yet. Yeah, I think he's a great independent candidate. Like I definitely don't agree with him on everything, but he's doing all the work. He got all the signatures to get on the ballot, and he's really doing like the outreach work that's necessary. And one thing I like that you touched on is like how many roadblocks there are to getting on the debate stage. And like, because that's the one thing that Democrats and Republicans can agree upon is making rules so that it's virtually impossible to have independents on, because it's in both of their self-interest. So like, they keep saying you need this amount of signatures, that goes up, you need this amount of money fundraised, you need this percent in the polls, and it always goes up and makes it more difficult. So I think our listeners should definitely check it out, and whether you're going to vote for him or not, I would like to see him on the debate stage with, probably Ed Markey and the Republican.
Totally. And yeah, I think that's exactly what I came away from it. Like, wicked smart dude, wicked good dude. Really, really great guy, super smart. And yeah, it's funny thinking about the episode after. One thing that listeners don't know, and I forget if I've even told you this, was that, and this also was tricky for him, was there was a massive lag during our interview where like at least a couple of seconds. So it was hard to interject while someone was speaking, which you try not to do on podcasts anyway. I do to, middling success. But so it was tricky to like really push on things that, I may have pushed on if we were in person or something like that, or not lagging. But overall, the point of the show wasn't to fight him over random little nitpicks. It was more just to give him a space to talk about what he thinks and how he feels. And yeah, it's interesting. I think one thing you and I both agree with, and it's the thing we agree with on people on the further left of the economic left, like socialist side, is that a lot of the spirit of what they're saying, we're like, yes, but it's just the vehicle of how to get there that we differ on a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. And I was glad you asked him about all these DSA candidates like Mamdani and others that are running as Democrats, because I think that's one of the more interesting parts about his campaign, is that in the national context of having these self-identified socialists run in Democratic primaries and be pretty successful so far, he didn't want to do that. He chose to run as an independent along with his independent party. So I thought that was super interesting and kind of like a new wrinkle in the whole discussion of the future of the Democratic Party, because he's kind of positioning himself like firmly outside it completely.
Yeah, he doesn't think you can reform the party. That's effectively where it comes down to, is that he thinks that while there are a lot of great meaning people inside the Democratic Party, it's just too rotten to its core. So it needs to be like replaced effectively with his independent movement, which, I could totally see that argument. I don't agree per se, But I see why someone could come to that conclusion, given what we see, what we're going to talk about later in the show. But yeah, and I guess like it doesn't even really matter if you agree with him or not, almost like totally, in the sense that I feel like we should just be having more voices on the main stage regardless. Like I wish the libertarian candidate was on the stage, I wish there were a myriad of different voices, period. And especially if they're not bought out by corporations, I honestly think it's fine. Let people pick what they want, like why not?
Yeah, 100%. Like we don't really have a true left-wing, fully socialist party or candidate in the country. You do in Europe, obviously, but with our two parties, they just try to swallow up all the kind of smaller factions. So it's just good to have his voice in there. Just like what you said with libertarians. I'm not a libertarian either, but I wouldn't mind them being on the debate stage because clearly the Republican Democratic parties aren't really giving them airtime. You know what I mean?
Totally.
So I hope he ends up getting to the debate. We'll see. There's obviously a lot of hurdles. But I think that would be good, especially in a state like Massachusetts where Democrats easily win so much of the time. It makes it too easy for Democrats to win sometimes.
Totally. And in a lot of ways, this Senate election really does reflect a lot of the criticisms that Tache was saying on the show, which is that you have two candidates running, Markey and Moulton, both with clear flaws, given where they are in their career. Markey being so old, but being progressive. Moulton being younger, but I'd say less committed to his views and values, maybe is a nice way to say it. Or not as charismatic, we could say, to be nice to Mr. Moulton. And so you have a lot of voters being like, I don't want to do this, And yeah, probably one of the things that I thought he said that I agreed with the most on, and it was more conceptual, was that for people who don't agree with the Republicans, especially on the federal level, you're effectively in a one-party system where it's either you vote Democrat or you don't vote at all, effectively. And that's terrible. We can't just do that. That's a part of the reason why we're in the mess that we're in now. So yeah, I think that regardless, we should be anyone, especially someone like him who's just smart and well-spoken. And again, it's not about agreeing or disagreeing. It's are they arguing in good faith? Would their voice add to the room? And definitely, I think with him, definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
And I don't think he's going anywhere regardless. I said that off the top of the show last week, but the last episode, but he's too smart, man. Even if the Senate election doesn't go, I feel like this guy's not going away.
Yeah, totally. And especially with how involved he is in Roxbury community, and he's written about gentrification there and whatnot, I can totally see him running for Boston City Council or something like that.
Exactly. And hey, this is how these things happen. I agree with the point too, the social movements often lead to the political movements. And a lot of the times the social context gets oversimplified when looking back in history of why things happened the way they did. Yeah. So anyway, I encourage people to listen. I'm really curious what people think about that because he definitely represents the not far left, but economically very left viewpoint on how a society should be ran.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, anyways, let's get to the news. A lot of news to cover. And I wanted to start today's show with more of a news update / philosophical conversation, I guess you could say. And this is about Ukraine and Iran, the wars, basically the two big wars that have defined the last 5 years, basically, which is Ukraine and Iran. And so this week we saw Ukraine actually striking Iranian commercial vessels with, I think, a drone or a missile or something, I forget. And so effectively the two wars have merged in a way. Now, if you're having Ukraine fighting Russia and Iran, U.S. helping Ukraine fighting Russia and Russia helping Iran, and then you also have them in Sudan fighting each other, Ukraine and Russia, that is. There is now multiple fronts here of these conflicts. And one of the questions we used to get a lot more often, but we haven't gotten a little bit, which is is this World War III? Is this World War III? Is this World War III? And we've always said no, right? No, it's not. But I'm wondering now, and this is just, there's no right or wrong answer, I don't think, is if Ukraine and Russia now are officially involved in Iran, I guess, is it World War III? Just thinking about it more just philosophically or just kind of from a conceptual level? Or is it still separate enough that it's just two kind of Cold War type proxy wars happening at the same time?
Yeah, that's a great question. How many countries need to be directly involved before it triggers the label World War III?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you could argue like the US and all of Europe that's supporting Ukraine is already involved in that conflict. So that's, a good amount of the world. It's tough because on one hand, Ukraine needs to defend themselves the best they possibly can, right? And so I don't love the sort of Tucker Carlson nitpicking everything Zelensky and Ukraine has done the past couple of years to put it in the worst possible light while their country's being attacked and bombed every day by a global superpower that wants to take over them. But on the other hand, like those right-wing characters in the US also have been saying that the Ukraine war is going to lead to World War III the past few years. And this obviously bolsters that case. So yeah, it's a tough call. I mean, I would say like a few more major countries would have to get directly involved, like China or Japan or something. But it's now more on the table. I think if Ukraine starts bombing Iran inside the country, I think that would be a major escalation, right? Like this was a ship that they're alleging had arms from Russia to Iran. Or vice versa. I don't know which direction the ship was going. It's not like Ukraine is like, we're getting involved in this war because Iran's nuclear capabilities are a threat. They're getting involved because they say they're exchanging arms with Russia. So I hope this doesn't escalate anymore. We definitely don't need these two wars to become one.
That'd be a nightmare.
But yeah, what do you think about this World War III potential?
I don't know. It's interesting because in Sudan, which has been at war now effectively during the same time period that these two big wars have been happening, it originally was just almost more of like a civil war versus an international conflict. But over the last year or so, there have been a lot of reports of Russia going to Sudan to get gold to help fund their war because they're running out of money, and Ukrainian soldiers being in Sudan trying to prevent them from getting the gold. So you have Russian and Ukrainians fighting over like gold mines in Sudan, which is crazy. I mean, obviously that's another continent of involvement. Yeah, it's funny. One of the other things that have been talked about the last few weeks has been the Yemeni Strait, the Babosh something, I'm blanking on the name, and the Houthis kind of closing that strait. And remember that when Trump took office, that was the airstrikes that Hegseth leaked to the Atlantic, was strikes on the Houthis in Yemen, which should have immediately led to Pete Hegseth's resignation if we lived in a normal world in any shape or form. But week 1 or 2, he did that, by the way. It was really just starting off with a giant flop. So yeah, it does feel like we're one Houthi strike away on like a European vessel for this to go full World War III. Like if a Houthi hits a Spanish boat or a French vessel or a UK vessel, I could see a world where they start retaliating, they get mad, and then boom, you have it. I think at the minimum, we're still in a Cold War, it seems like. It seems like the Cold War is back because you can definitely say that the Ukrainian war is effectively a proxy war. I guess Russia's directly involved. But Israel and Gaza, or Israel and Lebanon, Israel, Iran, that's definitely, you could argue, is a proxy war with the U.S. And yeah, you could say Venezuela, right? Remember when they were about to get Maduro, they had Russian tankers kind of hanging around there. You could say Cuba with what's going on with the Trump administration continually threatening that. And also just the rhetoric in general from Trump and team being so anti-communism. Again, this feels very Cold War-y, and I think it's not a crazy take to say the Cold War is totally back at the minimum. And the Cold War always kind of felt like a teetering world war, right? Like it's hard to pull the two apart. I guess one country wasn't like, I'm going to take over the world, which is the two parts that were true in World War I and II. But yeah, I mean, if the U.S. invaded Greenland, or like it does feel like we're one conflict away. We're like one tipping point away. And it seems like because China's so powerful, it would have to be with them to really make it like that. But I don't know. I'm not sure. What do you think about the Cold War theory, though?
Yeah, I agree. And especially with the other Gulf states being dragged into this because of drones back and forth and whatnot. Like, how much are they going to tolerate being bombed by Iran, one drone a week or whatever it's been, and a few deaths here and there. Like, obviously they're responding by helping the US and Israel and sending drones themselves. But like, what if there was an attack in Saudi Arabia that killed 100 civilians, and it was connected to Iran or connected to Russia? Like, that would be a complete disaster. And those countries would be like, we're sending boots on the ground into Iran right now. You know? And that would really escalate things. So, yeah, it's all on the table. Unfortunately, we have the absolute worst person in charge of the U.S. to deal with this immensely complex and dangerous situation.
It's awful. And yeah, you're so right. Another thing that could totally escalate it too is if any like celebrity or major politician gets hurt or killed, God forbid. We've seen that in history too. Like a random German secretary of blah gets shot or is in the Middle East and has something go wrong or anything of that nature happens, this thing could go like it would just be gasoline on a fire and the thing would go nuts. So we're definitely teetering around major drama, I think, which I guess you could say we have been doing, but I think it's them merging together is a bad news. That's bad news. Like one massive war. I don't love that idea. But interesting about Iran. So this weekend they had paused their bombings, the US that is, and there were originally conflicting reports on why they had paused the bombing. And it turns out it's because they ran out of ammunition. They ran out of munitions. And that's the worst reason, probably, that had stopped, right? They ran out of bombs. And I ask again, what have they been doing with their almost $1 trillion budget the last decade? They ran out of bombs?
Yeah, that is so ridiculous. I feel like we need to keep saying it, but this war was started at the end of February, and it was supposed to be 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And we're in August now, and zero progress has been made.
Zero. No
One
progress.
step forward, 2 steps back. It's easy with all the other stuff in the news. And of course, Trump always has a million distractions that he feeds to the media. But it's kind of easy to just forget that this is happening and we're in an active war with a major country. I mean, at least you are starting to see it affect Trump's approval ratings. There was some polls that came out this week that shows it's at record low and that close to 2/3 oppose this war specifically. So I'm not sure, but yeah, Trump he seems backed into a corner, and you can tell him and his administration know it because they're feeding these stories into the media that J.D. Vance isn't supportive of the war, clearly because he's going to run for president and knows that this would potentially sink his chances.
Definitely. And also why that I think this week they announced this Gaza deal of disarming Hamas this week, and that there's some deal rumored on the table. I think that came out right after the poll, right? Which I don't think is a shocker. And it does speak to this weird relationship politicians and the American people have with polls in general. That there's this one hand group of people who say polls are a joke. We don't care about polls. Ha 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 ha. Yet time and time again, we see the polls instantly change the political people's views. So clearly they believe them. Whether you don't think the polls are true, listener, the politicians definitely do. And maybe that's wrong, but I don't think it's a coincidence that a couple of days after that poll came out, Rick, that you were referencing, Trump goes, oh, actually, Israel and Hamas are going to have a deal soon. We're almost out of here. And I don't buy it at all that it will happen. But I mean, hopefully it does. But I think that was directly related about it because, what are the odds that a poll comes out that says everyone hates you and your war? And then the next day he goes, we're ending the war.
Right. Trump cares about polls more than any other politician ever has. He's constantly talked about it for the past 10 years, and he's constantly made up numbers because he's embarrassed about what the actual numbers show. Just recently, and for context, the recent polls, a couple of them had his approval rating at like 32, 33%, and the averages is like 38, 39, which has been pretty steady. But Trump posted on Truth Social the other day, our own polls are showing 50%, perhaps even 65%. Like of just throwing out these, and it's literally the opposite. It's like 65 disapprove of it. But he wouldn't constantly lie about polls, just like his crowd sizes, if he wasn't incredibly insecure about it.
Definitely. And you have to imagine, especially with the panic around the midterms and the clearly backed into a corner shenanigans he's trying to pull, that they all know deep down within the White House that they're cooked this midterm, or they would be squirming around, recoiling so much about all these things. And yeah, lastly on these kind of stories, so Netanyahu was at the White House this week, a week after Mamdani went on stage saying he should be arrested by the International Court and tried for war crimes. And it's so interesting because it really does show you the two sides of the American political coin. On one side, you have the mayor of New York City saying this man should be arrested for war crimes, or tried at least, in the International Court of Justice. And then you have the literal White House hosting him and celebrating with him. And it's such a bizarro world where those two things can happen within a week of each other.
Totally. And I read an interesting op-ed, I think it was in like USA Today, about how Netanyahu, even though he's previously been seen as like a shrewd and clever politician, especially within Israel, his gamble in the US totally backfired on him, which is that I'm going to fully and openly embrace the Republican Party in the US as like my home. Whereas pre-Obama, it was always, I love both parties love Israel. Israel went so out of their way because they loved the bipartisan support to ever do something like that. But then you saw during Obama and Biden administrations, Netanyahu getting in these little quibbles with them where he would criticize them for not being strong enough, despite them giving unconditional arms to them continuously. So it's like he really bit the hand that feeds him too much, I think, and we've ended up in this place where Democrats are calling for his arrest. And meanwhile, Republicans are inviting him to dinners, being like, this guy is a hero for protecting Western interests or whatever. So I just feel like a bad political move for Netanyahu. In addition to all the horrific things he's doing as leader of his country, he probably shouldn't have deliberately picked fights with Democrats who make up half the country.
Yeah, and also potentially half of the party he went on now that there's such an anti-AIPAC, anti-Israel resurgence coming out of the Republican side, too. It's becoming the bipartisan issue of 2026 is anti-AIPAC, at least. But I do think what you're saying needs to be emphasized. Truly the difference between the position of the party, of what the Republicans view in Netanyahu and whatnot, and how the Democrats view Netanyahu. Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries and all these guys are way too soft on Netanyahu, and frankly, soft on how their policies around Israel in general have been over the last whatever, how long you want to say. But none of them would celebrate Netanyahu as much as the majority of Republican people in office are doing.
For sure. It's a major difference, and I don't think Kamala Harris made it clear how different they were. I think that's probably one of her campaign's regrets, is that she didn't do enough to say, I'm clearly more anti-Israel and Trump is clearly pro-Israel. The waters were blurry enough where it just seemed people that were going to vote single-issue voters just sat it out or voted third party.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't see that difference. And I still think some of those establishment Dems like Schumer and Stevens are way too soft, but you're seeing now a clear majority of Democratic politicians say we need to end aid to Israel unless they stop doing everything they're doing, basically.
Yeah.
Which is so much different than Trump saying, not only are we going to give them unlimited money, we're actually going to help them overthrow the Iranian government, help them fight in Lebanon, put our own soldiers' lives on the line to protect Israel, and get nothing back.
Yeah, literally.
Apparently, right?
And like bring Netanyahu home to celebrate with him, to party with him.
Right.
They're celebrating him as a person at the White House.
And I think some of us did notice the difference between Harris and Trump on this. If you remember before the election, Trump said he wants to wipe Gaza off the map and turn it into a resort for rich people.
Yep.
Like
they still are saying that. Yeah,
that's a massive difference, but I'm definitely happy that the difference is becoming clearer every day as Netanyahu gets more isolated and extreme.
And yeah, exactly. And because even a shill like Haley Stevens, who's taking $60 million worth of AIPAC funding for the primary election, she'll even say Netanyahu's nuts. We need a 2-state solution. And she's as in the tank for AIPAC as anyone. So that shows you the difference. Like, that would never come out of Mike Rogers' mouth, ever, in any situation.
Right.
And
Totally.
yeah, that does matter. And speaking of champions of Israel, so Lindsey Graham's funeral was this week. It was, I guess as uneventful as a funeral could be. Trump did his remarks. They were bad. That's not surprising. He can't speak. A lot was made out of his tap on the casket as he left. They called the tap. I saw a headline that said, "Tap, tap, you there?" as Trump was. Just ridiculous.
It's the Teddy Roosevelt thing all over again.
Exactly. So, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, Graham didn't make it. And yeah, that is that. So there are a bunch of things happening this week that will happen before our next show that I wanted to get on people's radars. The first is the Supreme Court is going to rule about mail-in voting tomorrow, probably, because, and what this is Trump is trying to ruin mail-in ballot voting. He wants it over. And they've been rejecting appeals and whatnot on what is constitutional or not regarding mail-in voting. So tomorrow, Monday that is, expect to hear some update on that. You'll see it on your news alerts, and it will be very, very, very consequential, regardless of how this goes.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just one of many initiatives the Republican Party is doing to discourage people or prevent people from voting. Which,
100%, yeah.
I would encourage our listeners to think about why that is, that a party would want less people voting overall, but they're going all out.
And let us not forget that Trump himself voted mail-in ballot and is the ultimate hypocrite that he can do it, but you can't. A man with billions of dollars can't find time to go in and vote, but you must, even though you're working that day. And
yeah, he golfs 5 days a week for 4 hours at a time, but he can't be bothered.
But if you were working that day, you got to call off and maybe not afford rent. That's fair. Yeah, that's totally fair.
I think Democrats or whoever also need to make changing voting day to Saturday a thing. I don't know why that's not being pushed. You only hear it occasionally, once every 4 years. Somebody brings it up. Why is this a thing? It's a thing you hear from people in other countries and other democracies of like, yeah, of course we vote on the weekend. Like that. Why would you make people leave their jobs to vote? That's got to change.
Awful. It's just absolutely awful. And so, yeah, that has to change big time. And speaking about how voting is on weekdays, on Tuesday is the Michigan Senate primary election, Abdul El-Sayed and Haley Stevens. The polls have been interesting. Some show Abdul really, really up. Some show it neck and neck. Some show Stevens up. It's confusing. I think it's going to be a tight race no matter what happens. That's on Tuesday. Of course, they had their debate last week, their final debate. The biggest difference, of course, is this $60 million of AIPAC funding that Stevens has gotten. And Abdul, of course, running a very no PAC money, no company influence type campaign. So yeah, it's very grassroots versus establishment Dems. We've seen the establishment really rally around Stevens. They're doing the thing that they do. Whitmer endorsing her, Gary Peters endorsing her, and much of the Democratic coalition endorsing her. So yeah, it's one of those ones. There's no way around it. It's the outsider versus the Dem establishment narrative coming to fruition, whether you like it or not. Whether people think that's a good idea or not a good idea, I think it's bad that we do this, but it's happening again.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm really rooting for Abdul, obviously. I've heard criticisms from establishment Democrats of him recently of like, why is he making AIPAC such a big issue? And it's unusual that AIPAC is spending $40 million in the Democratic primary.
It's
right?
a record.
Like,
it's the record amount of money spent in any primary period by super PACs.
Yeah. And they spend a lot of money, but a lot of other super PACs spend a lot of money in races all the time. Abdul's overall point that it's a campaign law issue that is allowing this, and obviously Stevens is to blame for not rejecting it. That makes sense, but it's not like she's getting $40 million from the coal lobby, another 50 from the oil lobby, and Abdul is only going after her for AIPAC. Then I could maybe understand some of the criticism, but this is an unprecedented level of AIPAC influence in this primary, and so it's totally fair for Abdul to be talking about it all the time. It's the main obvious difference between the two. And why would AIPAC be spending so much money if they didn't think Stevens was just a home run for Israel overall?
Exactly. And it's like what we were talking about earlier. If it wasn't a big deal, then why are they spending so much money on it? It's hard to say that the progressives are talking about it too much when the other side is spending record amounts of money to cancel the other candidates and run attack ad after attack ad over and over and over again. So why are they doing that if it's not a big deal? If the issue isn't important, then why is one side spending tens of millions of dollars on it and the other side is not spending even a tenth of that much on it? And so, yeah, at one point you have to reflect your communication around what you're being told and what you're being given. And if one group is actively spending tens of millions of dollars to attack you, I don't think it's unreasonable to respond. And you're so right. One of the big highlights, or I guess you could say lowlights of the debate was Haley Stevens getting called out for taking DTE money. For those who don't know, DTE is a major utility in Michigan. And there's obviously been a lot of drama in Michigan over data centers. Most of the data center drama in the country has happened in Virginia or Texas, but Michigan is one of the states with the most of the data center drama. And it's one of the main reasons is because of the way data center contracts are done in DTE, which is that they were all redacted from public information. So the public wasn't able to view the terms of the agreements on what was happening in terms of like how much energy they'd be used, effects on prices, on resource allocation, like are they coming from fossil fuels or clean sources? A lot of this stuff was just completely hidden from the public. So DTE, alongside just data centers in general, have been a huge issue in Michigan and obviously nationwide, but especially in Michigan. And the Stevens campaign took like 30 grand from them, and Haley just lied. She said, I didn't take any money, which you can see on the open secrets FEC filings that she did. And Abdul talked just about that. And I think you're right. Like, it's not about AIPAC per se. It's about record amounts of PAC funding going for the quote unquote establishment candidate. And I think the thing that a lot of people should think about is that if this is the only way she's competitive is with tens of millions of dollars of PAC funding, A, if she wins, will it still be there when in the general election? And B, doesn't that say something about her as a politician and her platform? And she's not running on any.
Right. Yeah, and I just in the past couple weeks have been getting a lot of AIPAC sponsored ads about this race, probably because I follow Abdul on Instagram. I've been getting them on Instagram, but AIPAC's has a PAC called, I think it's United Democracy Project.
Yes.
Because the AIPAC name has been so brutally torched. Yeah. That they're like, we need the most generic, pleasant sounding name. So it's like United Democracy something. But I've been getting all these ads from them that are made to seem like a news headline. And the news headline is Republicans are trying to elect Abdul El Sayed to be the Democratic nominee because they know he'll lose in the general. And it's just so slimy because one, I don't think that's true. Two, there's no evidence Stevens would be better in the general than Abdul would be. But it's slimy enough to not go by AIPAC and have to develop a new name so people don't know. But it's another one to make your whole approach being like, oh, we're not attacking Abdul. We're just letting you know. If you're a progressive guy, conservatives love Abdul because they know he'll lose. So just consider that. It's a real slimy ad tactic.
And it's this. Well, she also was the one using her photo op with Obama that she did a decade ago as a way to pretend that he endorsed her, which is so slimy.
There was a clip that they used in an ad of Obama introducing Stevens at a rally from one of her past races.
Yeah, from a decade ago, a long time ago.
And for sure, it's the whole point was to imply that Obama's supporting her in the primary. That was
definitely,
yeah.
I guess one of the things I hate about it more than anything, other than obviously, like you said, I want Abdul to win. We like Abdul. Obviously, we met him. We're in the tank for Abdul. But not even just that. I hate when they do things like that, the Democrats, that is, because it only fuels the narrative more of establishment Democrats are bought out, they're working against progressives, there's this like internal civil war. And people have commented saying that like that's bad, and like both Bernie and Schumer kind of stoke the flames of this to an extent, which I agree with. But it gets harder and harder to defend the establishment or whatever, the mainstream Democrats, when you see things like that. When you see Governor Whitmer say, oh, I'm not going to endorse anyone, I'm going to stay out of it, and then randomly go for Stevens, or Gary Peters do the same thing. When, in fact, when McMurrow was still in the race, Stevens was polling third, and they were both biting their tongue. So weird timing to rally around Stevens in this case. And I just think it's getting harder to put your head in the sand, that there's a clear push against progressive candidates that are not within the quote-unquote establishment when you see behavior like this.
Right, and it makes you question, what is Schumer's end goal or ideal future of the Democratic Party? Because not only is he elevating old, unpopular, uncharismatic politicians, but like Haley Stevens is not going to run for president someday. She's not going to be a national leader of the Democratic Party. It's not like Schumer is like, so this woman is unbelievably important to the future. Right. It really does seem like it's an ideological disagreement, and he just simply thinks these progressive candidates are way too radical. That's how it comes off.
Definitely. And he's allowed to think that. Anyone can, you can think whatever you want. Like, I don't judge, you like Stevens, you like Stevens. Fair enough, But I would say, I don't even know what Haley Stevens thinks because of how much money she is. I don't know if I like Haley Stevens or not because of how much money she's clearly taking from people. And that's my issue with all these guys. I'm not against people disagreeing with us, obviously. I'm against them not communicating their actual values clearly in a way that I don't even know what they're thinking. And that's what I would criticize Haley Stevens on, not what she's saying. I don't even know if she thinks this stuff. That's the problem. And so I have no faith that she'll act in a way that she's saying because I just don't know, right? And so, yeah, and also Abdul, I think, and it's similar to Zoran, and it's easy to compare the two because they're both devout Muslims who are progressives, and you can easily comp the two. But I do think similarly to Zoran, maybe not as extreme, but similarly, Abdul does have star power in that he's super, super smart, an unbelievable communicator, incredibly charismatic. And if I was Democratic leadership, I just want more stars on my team. The fact that when people talk about the 2028 election, they're talking about Kamala again, they're talking about Newsom again, they're talking about Buttigieg again, who I don't dislike as many progressives don't like, but like still, these are old names that we're recycling. We should be embracing the rising stars of the party, period.
Yeah, 100%.
To your point, right? So you want to put your hand with Abdul so you could be like, okay, this is a guy who could really do a lot of damage. Tallarico, this guy could do a lot of damage. These are really rising stars. Why not embrace them?
Right, especially coming out of 2024, where one of the biggest issues was like people didn't seem to understand Harris's vision for the future other than I'm going to do the opposite of what Trump is doing. But you see that when you watch the Stevens and Abdul debate, is Abdul has a very clear platform and policy proposals and direction he wants the Democratic Party to go. Stevens, let's take Israel out of the discussion. Obviously, she's way more pro-Israel, but let's just put that to the side. It's like, what is the future of the Democratic Party for Stevens? Continue doing what we're doing, expand universal health care, but not in a radical way. And this is the issue with all the Schumer-backed candidates in these primaries, is that we are way overdue for Democrats to have a positive message about where the future could be that's separate from just opposing everything Trump does. Whereas Stevens seems to be running a campaign that's just, I'm not as anti-Israel as Abdul, and I'm not an extreme left-wing person, but most of what I'm going to talk about is opposing everything Trump is doing, which is great, but that's what 95% of the Democrats in Congress have been doing for the past 10 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like other than
To
John
no
Fetterman
success.
and Manchin, Democrats already oppose Trump. So if Schumer would be smarter to find some establishment centrist candidates that have a ton of charisma and that have a very clear platform with major policies that would have a drastic effect on society, despite them being more centrist, the potential is out there. Obviously, Obama is the best example of this, and he's exceptionally charismatic, but they just don't seem able to find anyone like that. So we're left with Haley Stevens and Janet Mills.
Exactly. These random schmucks.
Yeah.
No, for sure. Do you really think just sitting around and doing the same song and dance you've been doing will win? And yeah, this is something that Tache would say. No, it's not a coincidence. The Democratic Party's rotten to its core. That's why we need the Socialist Party. But I mean, and when you see moments like this, and it's hard to be like, he's totally wrong. And yeah, speaking of attention whore John Fetterman, he was in the news again this week because there's been this outward courting of him to try to, from the Republicans, to switch him to become a Republican. You know, you had John Toon saying, oh, we want him really bad. And so this week, they asked this to Schumer. They said, what do you think about the idea of, Fetterman switching parties? Do you want to keep Fetterman? And I want to play the clip of what Schumer says so we don't get accused of, parsing his words. Let's watch what Chuck Schumer has to say when asked this exact question.
Yes. I couldn't. Republicans have been pulling out the stops to support Senator John Fetterman. How do you feel like he's done as a Democratic senator? Do you want him to stay on your Senate?
Yes, and he is a very good member of Congress. The people in our caucus very much like him and respect him, and we're a Big Tent party. We can have a lot of different views in that party. Yes.
So he wants Fetterman. And I gotta tell you,
I'm done. I'm done with Fetterman.
Not only do I not want Fetterman, I think anyone should want Fetterman. Like, let him run as a Republican. I don't give a crap. Replace him with a real Democrat. I don't want him. This is his direct quote. So someone asked Fetterman, what do you think? This is the direct quote. I truly appreciate the leader's nice word. I don't know if the Democratic Party is, quote unquote, big tent enough for proud pro-Israel supporters that also strongly reject this warped mutation of Democrat socialists now rising in their ranks. Yeah, I agree. We shouldn't be big tent enough to capture someone that he's describing. I don't want Fetterman in the party.
No, me neither. We do want a big tent. Democrats need a big tent. Republicans have a massive tent. Now, that tent has been transformed to be, do you like Trump today or no?
Yeah.
And that's the only thing that matters. But that's effectively a big tent because you have libertarians and you have evangelicals and you have everyone saying, yeah, we actually do kind of like Trump. Fetterman, it's not. So maybe we need to remind people, it's not just that he's unabashedly pro-Israel, which is pretty bad in August of 2026, the way things have gone. But he voted against the Iran powers resolutions, which all that's doing is asserting Congress's own constitutional ability to fund wars and declare war. So he voted against that. And I guess you could argue, it's kind of tied to Israel. So maybe Fetterman just loves Israel so much that
he can't help himself.
He didn't want to mess with it. But he also approved Pam Bondi as Attorney General. And that comes with a million different issues.
Baggage.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
He voted to confirm Markwayne Mullin more recently. He voted to end the shutdown. And I realized, because Fetterman's going on Fox News on a weekly basis, at least at this point.
Yeah.
That's all I see of him is him talking to friggin' Jesse Waters at 11 at night. I realized there are this is my new theory. There are two types of Democrats that love going on Fox News. There's the Pete Buttigieg types who are clearly liberal, but very articulate and believe in their abilities to go into enemy waters and hopefully convince some of their viewers, which I think is great. Why just go on liberal shows where everyone agrees with you? And you have some people way more left of Pete, like obviously Hassan Piker is willing to go on all these shows. Mehdi Hassan goes on all of these shows. That's one type. Then you have Tulsi Gabbard and Fetterman, who are just conservatives, and that's fine. They're centrist conservatives. They're not like the most right-wing people on the planet or anything, but they are conservatives that are holding on to the Democratic label because it helped them get elected and they'll just go where things are popular.
Yeah.
And
they're liars. I mean,
right.
that's what a liar is, right? Like a snaky, flip-floppy liar.
Before Tulsi Gabbard switched parties and went full MAGA and eventually joined the Trump administration in the second term, like before that, she was doing this. She was still a Democrat and going on Fox News every week and saying the Democrats have gotten way too left-wing, but, you know, I still believe in the core of the Democratic Party and we'll see. Maybe I'll go independent, but, you know. And then a year later, she's just full MAGA. And that's the Fetterman role. Like Fetterman's not going on Fox News to convince conservatives of progressive policies.
No,
right? He's going on Fox News because it's the only safe space he has left.
And that is so sad. And and he's gonna end up with a podcast for sure in his life. This is the end. What bothers me even more is how anti-democratic socialist he is. He's one of the only people in the Democratic Party, period. You know, not even Schumer, Jeffries are so aggressively anti-Bernie Sanders, Zohran Mamdani, Chris Rabb, all these guys who are really making moves. And I think that's why I think he shouldn't even be in the Democratic Party. I don't think our party should include people that think Zohran Mamdani's a bad guy. Bernie Sanders is a bad guy. You don't have to agree with those guys. That's fine. You're allowed to have different opinions and we can find nuance in between. But he calls them clowns and jokes and he's like actively very aggressive against them. All the people who are without a doubt the most popular Democrats in the country and the only people mobilizing the Democratic base in any shape or form to spend all your time on Fox News calling for them to be removed from office and ripping them is a joke. And it's something that not even like Hakeem Jeffries would never do that. Chuck Schumer would never do that. They're at least either savvy enough politically or sane enough that they don't feel that way to be so freaking stupid. And I think if we're going to have a guy ripping on all of the people who are up and coming stars of the party and or the patron saint of the progressive movement and Bernie Sanders, then he doesn't have a place in the party. Joe Manchin wouldn't say this, even if he thought it, you know? Like, this is weird. He's antagonistic and he's he's a troll and I don't like him. I want him out.
Yeah, he's a grumpy conservative and that's great, but you shouldn't be a Democratic senator in 2026.
No.
With those views. And I'm glad you brought up his name calling because it's not like he's going on Fox News and debating Mamdani's rent control policies.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And if they're effective or not to keep rent down. He's just going on and being like, they hate Israel, so they're anti-Semitic, and they're just a bunch of clowns. He never has anything of substance to actually criticize these people
smart.
for. Right.
He's not good.
He's just a grumpy, bitter dude who needs to just leave the party and
he's a bad conservative too. Like he wouldn't even, at least Susan Collins can like mutter out a coherent sentence, you know? Like he's basically at best a Collins Murkowski type, at worst Ted Cruz, I think, in that like he's so actively attacking. Because, you know, Murkowski and Collins aren't like going out of their way to attack Bernie.
Yeah, Fetterman is reaching McCarthy Red Scare levels of anger.
Yeah, I don't like him. But again, though, this is to your point earlier about the vision of the Democratic Party, like what it looks like in the future. I would have loved to have seen Schumer say, I don't think Fetterman is representing the Democratic Party's values by the way he attacks all of this stuff. Like that very, you know, political caveated sentence that he gave, I think is exactly the point of his weakness and exactly the point of his poor performance as the leader of the party, because I think if he could read the room at all and understand that a really significant chunk of his base is furious with Fetterman and the way he's been behaving, you would say something like that, right?
Right. Of course, especially the downfall of Pam Bondi was one of the biggest wins Democrats have had the past year.
Yeah,
is
for sure.
Destroying her career because of what she did with the handling of the Epstein files. And yeah, you don't get to do that if you're Fetterman and voted for her.
He's not a Democrat. I just think it's just weird to have him there. I just don't. And you could say with Manchin or something like that, you could be like, well, he's a Democrat in West Virginia, and like that's a different viewpoint than a Democrat in California or whatever. Fetterman's out of Pennsylvania. Like I know they voted for Trump, but they're not like a super red state. Like,
no. He's changed so much from his campaign, which was a very Graham Plattner like campaign.
Yeah. Him and Plattner have a lot in common, I think. I think Plattner could have Fetterman. We may have dodged a bullet there.
They're not the most joyful politicians in the world.
Talk about someone I wouldn't want to get a beer with.
Yeah. Nightmare blunt rotation.
Yeah, Jesus Christ, dude. Those guys suck. Well, and speaking of Bondi, Blanche's, her replacement's confirmation hearing was this week, and they keep having to postpone it because both Tom Tillis and Cornyn will not confirm him over this freaking 1.8 anti-weaponization fund drama. For those who don't remember, when Trump sued the IRS for nothing, for $8 billion, part of the settlement was that not only would the Trump and his family not ever get audited again by the IRS. That was one of the clauses. The second one was the creation of this $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund, which was supposed to basically go to January Sixers and such to pay for their legal fees and damages, apparently. And originally, Todd Blanche had said, the guy going for attorney general, he loved it. And then he's had to walk that back as the Republican Party has. Apparently, that's their line. They won't let that happen. And especially the two recently purged, or one resigned, one purged senators, Tillis and Cornyn, they are now making this a sticking point. So yeah, Trump has said he wants Blanche, and he said maybe I'll pull Blanche and do him next year. I don't know. So we'll see. But any thoughts on this?
So Blanche is the acting AG, right?
Yeah, because he's interim AG because he was the lieutenant one or what.
Yeah, so it's Trump just can't let anything go, especially when it's these like personal issues. Like he got such blowback from people within his own party. You would think he would have let this go a month ago, but he just can't.
He doesn't care.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the unfortunate thing is like, can Blanche just stay indefinitely as acting AG if they don't confirm him? Like, is there a point in the confirmation process?
It's a good point.
I don't know.
I guess, they'd have to try to replace him, and then they could slow walk that too. Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And it's just so corrupt. And on that note, the Wall Street Journal this week reported that the Trump administration, Trump specifically, has fundraised $800 million this term alone for the ballroom, the library, and aligned committees, so super PACs, the MAGA Inc. PAC specifically. The one in charge of his fundraising is this woman called Meredith O'Rourke. Have you heard of her? I had never heard of her before.
I don't think so.
And in this reporting, apparently Trump refers to her as the Princess of Darkness. And the way that she starts the fundraising calls is the boss wants his money, give him his money. That's apparently a famous phrase. And apparently, according to this reporting, Trump asks her nightly which companies have and haven't paid, hands her names of people he's recently met with, and often tells her to double the ask that they had committed to. And in that reporting, we've seen $50 million from SoftBank, $22 million from Meta, $10 million to the Securing American Greatness PAC. Apple gave $25 million, Microsoft 10, Amazon 5. Apparently, Wall Street analysts are referring to it as the Trump transaction tax, because it's just such a big part of how you deal with the White House now. Absolutely awful, but also apparently entirely legal. So this is just the country we live in. Another point for Tache, probably.
Yeah, it's so sad, and it's one of the worst parts about our whole political system is fundraising and how much time, like if you talk to outgoing members of the House of Representatives who have to run for election every 2 years, like what they all say is like, I'm just tired of fundraising the whole day.
Yeah.
Like, if you've ever wondered what a congressman actually does on a daily basis when they're not voting on the floor, the majority of it is calling rich people asking for money. And that's true with Democrats, Republicans, everyone.
All of them, yeah.
It's even true with progressive candidates that don't take PAC money. They still need to raise money. It's literally like the main job of American politicians. is to call rich people and
Yeah,
ask for
that's
money.
all they do all day long. Yeah.
And it's a big difference from European
The rest of the
democracies
world, period.
that have
Canada.
that have strict campaign finance laws that would make this a time waste. The other thing is, like, what people always say about a second-term president is that, like, they don't have to spend the whole time worrying about fundraising and campaigning for re-election, but not Trump.
No.
Trump is still spending his time asking billionaires for millions of dollars. Like, he, I do think it's kind of an underrated quality of Trump, though, is that he does raise a lot of money.
Yeah. He gets so much
Like,
from all these companies.
he's very persuasive behind closed doors with people that like him. That's kind of his magic power, is the control he has over half of the country.
Well, because he'll literally do a one-to-one whatever they want. Whereas other politicians typically go, I'll do you some version of that. Like, usually, for those who don't know, when a lobbyist meets with a politician, they come with a plan and the politician does a version of that if they take the influence, right? Like, they don't go, I will do 100% of what Apple wants if Apple gives me this money. Trump literally, as to the Trump transaction tax, as apparently Wall Street's calling it, that's what that is. They go, we'll give you $20 million. We want you to go invade Venezuela and get the oil. All right. Like, we want $10 million, and you remove all the regulations around pollution. Sure, why not? Well, sure thing. Like, that's what he does. It's not like that normally. No one's ever been like that. His secret sauce is that he literally does 100% of the
His
betting.
secret sauce is open quid pro quo corruption.
Yeah, literally just being an absolute lap boy for the money 100%. No one's been this shameless. That's the sauce. Like, that's what he is. He's just such a snake. And I think it's hard for people to wrap their head around it because they all politicians are corrupt, but not like this. Not 1-to-1.
Right.
It's not do this. Okay. Immediately the next day, pardon a Bitcoin guy. You know what I mean? Like, it's 1-to-1. And yeah, and the tariffs are the best example of that. Who he puts tariffs on and how he doesn't. He's such a scumbag. And, and speaking of Trump and how he's just a purely corrupt man with no ideology, Comrade Trump was back at it again, which I'm going to start calling him Comrade Trump every time he does something socialist because he's back again. And this week, the Department of Commerce announced that they will be taking a minority share of 7 more companies. This has been a part of a larger theme of the Trump administration, of them taking ownership percentages of tech companies, 10% in Intel. This was a company called Kepler, a company called Multibeam, Xtropic, and some others. These are all, the deal was that if the U.S. government gets to have a minority stake in them, they'll give them CHIPS Act funding that obviously was allocated during the Biden administration. And yeah, what an interesting move again from apparently the conservatives of using government contracts as a way to then buy the companies that they're investing in, to literally own them. Again, Comrade Trump at it again.
Yeah, it's another example of open corruption. And the biggest issue with it is that when socialist politicians campaign for either partial or total takeovers of companies, they're promising to give 100% of that money to the people. That's the whole appeal of socialists proposing policies like this. Trump is not doing that.
No.
Trump is just his administration's just pocketing the money. It's just like him with the tariffs. Trust me, guys, you'll get a check eventually.
Yeah.
You know, it's
we're all waiting. Where to go? Where's my tariff check, dude? I thought I got a tariff check on the way.
But yeah, like, he's not even, if he was a smart politician, he would say, I promise to give X amount that we make on the profits from these stock holdings in a direct check to every American. But he's not even pretending to say that.
No, and it's also, if any Democrat ran on buying 10% of Intel and other major tech companies and using government funding to then, as a carrot, to then own a bunch of tech companies, literally every single conservative person in America would freak the fuck out. The idea that any Republican is behind the idea of using government contracts to then buy out private companies throughout the U.S. would have been an absolute blasphemous take from these guys. It is Another piece of the story that shows that these guys do not actually believe any of the crap that they've been peddling for the last decade of free market, private enterprise is the only way to innovation, yada, 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 because I haven't heard one comment of pushback from this. It is one of the most underrated parts of the Trump administration is how heavy the government's hand has been in terms of private industry and how unfree market he is. And this is just another example of that.
Yeah, you would think they would be up in arms about it, but they're not.
Dude, Biden never said anything like this. Biden didn't say that the CHIPS Act funding that he's using was never caveated on the concept of owning the companies that accepted the funding. No Democrat has ever done that. This is way more socialist than Obamacare.
100%.
Trump is more socialist than Obama. I don't think that's crazy.
Right.
Right? Like, what does he do that's free market?
Right. He's way more he's way more put the government in control to plan the economy.
Yeah.
But unless it has to do with safety or pollution, then he's fine with the government taking a step back.
But when it comes to economics, Trump's buying up tech companies. He's using tariffs to influence the means of production and trade flows. He's canceling free trade agreements because he says that he should be the one influencing where what gets bought where. He's using government contracts to influence curriculum in schools. I mean, isn't that freaking what any socialist country would be doing? I mean, it's crazy. Anyways, we live in the bizarro world. A bunch of immigration news this week, a lot to do with Haitian immigrants specifically. There's this thing called the TPS that has been ended, and so all of this asylum is under drama. And yeah, there are 300,000 Haitians in this country that will be affected by this. Yeah. Big deal. So obviously with all the drama ICE is wrecking, right? Like, and causing that, this is pretty scary, I'm sure, for Haitian immigrants throughout the country.
Yeah, for sure. And I have a tweet. I mentioned that I was going to bring this up. I saw The Odyssey a few days ago.
Yeah, I got to go see it.
Which
I'm
really
jealous.
liked. Yeah, it was great. But our Congresswoman, Ayanna Presley, tweeted, Odyssey this, Odyssey that. We Odyssey ICE abolished.
Where's my media board? Or at least, no.
Which a lot of people are comparing it to the famous Hillary Clinton Pokemon Go to the polls.
Yeah.
But I gotta say, I like this one. I am sympathetic to a good pun.
Odyssey this? That's something you would say. Odyssey this, Odyssey that, Odyssey ICE abolish.
That's something I would say at a social gathering and then make an excuse to leave after nobody.
Yeah, after you
it.
bombed, people go, ooh. Yeah, Odyssey that, Odyssey this. That's you.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of love this one. She's been getting a lot of shit for it, but
yeah, she's trying her best. I mean, she's funny though because she hasn't ever really gotten the headlines that a lot of the other kind of progressive congresswomen have gotten, where she's like best buds with AOC and yet has not really elevated in the public sphere as much as AOC has. Yeah,
for sure. And I think on the note of like ICE, something we've talked about before, but I think it's important that Republicans right now are really trying to smear every candidate that says abolish ICE to imply zero immigration police, zero border control, defund police forces, right? Like all these things that abolish ICE has nothing to do with.
Yeah, of course, 100%. Yeah. It's not at all about that. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's kind of like a hurdle that I feel like a lot of progressive candidates are like trying to overcome, like trying to explain that abolishing ICE because of what ICE has become is like necessary, but it doesn't mean we're soft on crime or soft on the border.
I think the best argument I've heard for the abolish ICE movement has been the idea that if you reform ICE, which is what a more moderate take would be, right? Just like, okay, we'll cut the funding, we'll make it, more humane, install body cameras, stuff like that. That could help in the short run, but whenever the next Republican gets into office, they'll just weaponize ICE again because it effectively can just act as a paramilitary personal police force based off the way it's set up. And that is a good point, right? Like, I think that actually kind of fully put me on that camp, thinking about it through that lens of just, I don't think ICE can work anymore based off of what it's become because of the politicization of it. So yes, I agree that Democrats need to be better at communicating that they'll take the border seriously and, immigration seriously. But actually, the case for abolishing ICE is much stronger than a lot of the more dramatic campaign kind of claims that you hear out of the left.
Yeah, exactly.
So quickly, before we get out of here, some news. The reflecting pool is officially over. They have officially conceded that it wasn't vandalism. It was just a botched job. Took only 3 weeks and an Olympian getting arrested for that to get to there. But so the pool is officially, he didn't do it. He couldn't fix the pool didn't get done. He officially folded. They live streamed a Camp David meeting this week, which is very weird to do that. 2 hours and 20 minutes. It was apparently attacked by Iranian cyber attackers, and somehow Trump said it's Minnesota's fault. I don't know how that was the headline. Tim Walz is gay. Somehow that's what he led with. 6 genders, Tallarico. Somehow that's how. Somehow that got thrown out there. And last but not least, Bobby Kennedy, RFK Jr. was in the news again because of course he is. And we talked about a couple of weeks ago him starting his own podcast. Now he's starting his own cooking show. He, his own version of Diners Dash. Robert Fieri is on the is on the move. And I wanted to show you the trailer for it. I don't know if you've seen the trailer.
No.
The Real Food Show. So let's take a watch.
Hi, I'm Robert F. Kennedy Jr., your HHS Secretary. Welcome to the Real Food Show. Thanks to President Trump, we flipped the food pyramid and put real food back where it belongs, at the center of the American plate. I'm traveling across America, connecting with renowned chefs to show families how to cook delicious, nutritious meals with real ingredients, all at affordable prices. America, it's time to eat real food. Let's get cooking.
Oh my God. I'm glad RFK is on the road. Celebrity chef Robert F. Kennedy.
Can we convince him to quit his day job and just do this full time?
This is all he wants, is to do podcasts
This is all he
and
wants.
shows. I'm
surprised there's no hunting and eating freshly killed animals involved in this cooking show.
That'll
We'll see.
almost certainly come up. He is going to be like, why not eat the raccoon off the road? It's healthy and real and not full of pesticides. That he approves, by the way.
You ever kill a bear and want to eat it that day?
You ever look at a dead rat and say, that's yummy? Yummy, yummy.
Yeah, rats used to be on the bottom of the pyramid. Now they're
My favorite
he
thing.
flipped it.
My favorite part of the food pyramid that he updated was he moved oatmeal to the very bottom. He hates it. No, the top, rather. Oatmeal is his least favorite food. And it's just, why isn't that real? Oats? No good?
Right. And it's sad the place we're in that I read a quote from him announcing it, and he was talking about cooking inexpensive, healthy meals, including, and he mentioned that diets rich in vegetables and fruits reduce disease risk. I have so little faith in RFK that, I was pleasantly surprised that he's even eating fruits and vegetables.
Yeah.
Because it's just I thought you were on roadkill and yogurt only.
And ferments.
Yeah, because last time we heard from him, he was strictly eating carnivore and ferments, which is like kimchi and yogurt.
Well, he says that, it might be for him specifically because he knows his biology. He knows his body. Well, it needs to be said that while he's going on tour doing a food show about fruits and veggies, there's literally an active cyclospora outbreak because apparently this country is no longer able to watch its fruits and vegetables at the farm level. So, the irony is so crazy. Do your fucking job. Why are you doing this?
Maybe look into enforcing regulations about how these vegetables are handled.
Instead of going on the road to diners and going, "Oh, it looks yummy." Like, why? Like, why does that guy think I'm the one who needs to be on camera? I need to be like, he thinks he's so hot and so charismatic. That's what drives me nuts. The face of health not being able to say a sentence. It's just the most beautiful picture of this entire administration.
Yeah.
How is he the picture of health? He had a parasite in his brain.
Yeah, and he looks like leather. He smells like leather.
And he sounds like leather. He sounds like the sound you get when you hit like a leather cushion. It goes.
When you beat someone with a belt.
Yeah. Like he's just the ugliest person. I can't believe that's what MAGA thinks is the hottest guy. They think him and Kristi Noem are like the hottest people ever.
Yeah.
You know what's funny about Kristi Noem is that her husband loving to put fake boobs on really didn't get enough traction.
Yeah, that was a short-lived news item.
Dude, imagine if Nancy Pelosi's husband loved putting fake tits on. That'd be everywhere. We would never hear the end of that.
There's no doubt Chuck Schumer would resign if he had an equivalent thing. If his wife was secretly like cross-dressing as a man, he would have to resign.
Yes. Dude, they got rid of Al Franken for a joke on SNL. The MAGA machine is so good at covering their insanity. It's so crazy. It's just all of these random social issues would have been just massive deals. If they found out deep down Kamala Harris's husband was cross-dressing on the side as part of a kink. Like, that would be literally crazy.
Using the username Big Tits McGee online. that is a election-ending issue. It's a campaign ender.
Nice, and they all go, people are horny. What are you going to do? It's crazy. What's able to roll off the back of these guys? It's just, dude. If Graham Plattner was in the Republican Party, he would be celebrated as a hero.
Yeah, exactly.
They'd be like, who isn't sending dick pics to every woman you know? I mean, come on, what are we doing here? The idea that they would like judge that is crazy. But I'm glad, you got to be glad that you have a party of somewhat morals, I guess. But whatever, what can you do? Anyway, that's it from me. Do you got anything before we get out of here?
No, I think that's it.
All right, dude. All right, well, thank you per usual. I don't want to jinx it. We have another guest next week. We are on a fucking hot streak, baby.
Big, bold moves from the Lonely Liberal.
And people listening, let us know if you want us to, who you think we should be reaching out to / trying to get on the pod. I was thinking maybe we should reach out to the woman running for governor of Wisconsin, Hong. She seems great. I want to talk to her.
Yeah.
We'll have anyone on, though. We're open.
Yeah, for sure.
Other than maybe Betcha, because you have a personal gripe with him.
Yeah, John Betcha's ads have ruined my life recently. But
he made you want to quit the show.
You betcha.
You betcha. If you haven't heard these Betcha, should we play the Betcha ad before we get out of here?
Yeah, well, we can just summarize it because the ad really doesn't offer anything. His name is John Betcha. He's running for an open Congress seat where I live in Middlesex County in Massachusetts. And because his name's John Betcha, his slogan is You Betcha. And he misses no opportunity to make the pun. I think in the first ad I saw, he made the pun 5 times in 30 seconds. And he's made future ads. But yeah, during Red Sox games, it's just between every inning, I'm seeing this fucking John Betcha ad.
And it does the troll thing of vibrate. You're like a phone vibrating, so it makes you think that your phone is vibrating. Scam likely. Not on my watch. John Betcha. That's it. That's the ad. He's a piece of work. Maybe we'll get him on the show, big boy Betcha. Anyway, I'll talk to you later, man.
Talk to you later. Thanks.
See ya.